Hello, my name is Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we continue our focus on Warhammer, Age of Sigmar. We've already talked about why this game system might be the right one for you, but today we're showing you your basic army choices and the shortcuts to getting the most for your money if you're new to the game. This video will not in any way, shape or form discuss the painting of miniatures. Suffice to say that Games Workshop and their competitors have a considerable paint range for those purposes, and there'll be plenty of information online for you to get started down that path. First things first then, we talk about the Age of Sigmar starter set, which at any given time will likely feature two specific armies. However, on this date and at this time, the Soul Wars set, as it's named, features Stormcast Eternals, effectively humans in bright gold armour, and Night Haunt, which for the layman is spectral ghosts with attitude. You'll also get a measuring tool, some dice, a hardcover core book with some background lore, the core rules and war scrolls that give you a handy way to see all of your unit's abilities at a glance. So when we talk about value for money, it simply does not get better than this starter set. You also get access to 2 exclusive miniatures for the Stormcast and 4 for the Night Haunt, as a cherry on top. You're getting near on 3 times the amount of value for money than you would if you bought these items separately, which even I have to admit is outstanding value. Whatever way you swing it though, the box isn't cheap in the first place, and so Games Workshop has you covered in that regard. If Soul Wars is the big box, then Tempest of Souls is the medium box that gives you closer to 2.5 times the value than it would if sold separately. And finally, Stormstrike is your small box that gives you about 1.5 times the value. Now, without going into too much detail, each of these boxes represent a dilution of the contents of the Soul Wars box, but they do all technically give you the ability to get models on a table and give Sigmar a go. In summary, the big box gives you more or less enough for a medium-sized army on each side, the medium box enough for a first game army, and the small box just enough for a demo game or to supplement the first 2. However, it should be noted that on the Stormcast side there are no battle line units, which represent the core of a legal army. For that you'll need one of the start collecting boxes that we're about to come onto. If you're only interested in one of these armies, then you'll probably find a better option there. Now it's time to go down the garden path and talk about those options if you simply cannot stomach the idea of either the Stormcast or the Night Haunt armies. This is where we discuss their range of start collecting box sets that are effectively supplementary starter products that ease you into an army of your choice. So if you've watched our first video, you'll recall me mentioning that there are 4 factions in the realms of Age of Sigmar: Order, the quote unquote good guys; Chaos, the bad guys that worship the Chaos gods; Destruction, the troublemakers and anarchists; and finally Death, aka those that hate the living. The next video in this series will give you a more detailed background to each of these factions, but of course that's not a discussion for today. With my Benji Tries to Be Helpful hat on then, I've taken the liberty of breaking these 4 factions down into 10 subcategories to help you make sense of the massive amount of choice you have in this most overwhelming of product lines. This should be especially helpful in this day and age where Games Workshop give copyrightable names to each and every one of the fantasy archetypes. I'll also give you a running visual commentary in the form of score grades given out that represent the value for money you get with each of these boxes. Let's kick things off with Order, where we talk about Lizardmen and both the Dwarven and Elven kingdoms. Here, Lizardmen get 2 boxes to choose from. The Seraphon, which represents some of the more elite units you might find in their army, including those on the back of lizard dinosaur hybrids. And the Skinks, which give you a unit of grunts, but also a couple of specialist units. Then we move to Dwarves, where you have 3 choices. Firstly, Greywater Fastness, which is your conventional vanilla dwarves with accompanying hammers, axes and shields. Oh, and the little gyrocopter that could. Then you've got your Fire Slayers, aka Berserker Dwarves, that wear a lot less clothes but have a lot more gung-ho in their approach to battle. And a hard to miss Magma Dragon thingy. Finally, we have Kharadron Overlords, which are basically steampunk dwarves with more guns than their cousins and a fairly imposing gunship. To round out the circle of order, we have even more choices of elven stock. First up is the Anvil Guard, essentially conventional dark elves with some troopers, a chariot and a big whopping Hydra type thingamajig. Next up is Daughters of Cain, essentially dark elves with a penchant for snake worship and intermingling. We then change tack somewhat with the Sylvaneth. Think nature loving wood elf comrades, the Dryads and tree folk. And finally, the last stop on the Elven Highway gets a little bit weird with the Idoneth Deepkin. What you are looking at here is essentially sea elves riding on the backs of sharks, because why not? You'll also find Wood Elves proper and Lumineth, aka High Elves, if you dig a little deeper into the GW website. That just about does it for order, so it's about time we transition nicely into chaos, starting with those colourful yet ghastly demons, the humanoid-ish incarnations of the 4 Chaos Gods. In no particular order, we have Slaanesh, whose primary function is the experience of pleasure and the inflicting of pain. Tzeentch, who busy themselves with the art of change and the practice of sorcery. Nurgle, those that delight in disease and drench themselves in decay. And finally, Khorne, revellers of warfare and murder. Whilst demons are largely born from chaos, there are those from the races of men that would much rather worship the gods of chaos than something perhaps a little more virtuous. The Khorne bloodbound are, as you'd expect, hell-bent on inflicting as much primitive violence on those that oppose them, and the Maggotkin of Nurgle are represented by those that clearly did not have the word hygiene in their vocabulary. Which leaves the Slaves to Darkness, who are the Johnny I haven't picked a god yet mob of generic Chaos Warriors. We then have our miscellaneous band of chaotic souls, represented first by Beasts of Chaos, aka Beastmen, the appointed children of chaos that bring a splash of Tzeentch festivities to the party. And last but not least, Skaven Pestilens, who use their great numbers and ingenuity in honour of the great corrupter himself, the Horned Rat. Moving swiftly on to Destruction. This is of course the home of orcs and goblins, represented here by the Ironjaws, a fairly elite band of orcs that, it should be said, do not have to be painted in bright yellow. If there's any army that you can experiment with colour schemes, it's the Orcs'. Gloomspike Gits provide a mishmash of goblin and troll goodness, not forgetting of course the Squigs, those comical pet-like and primitive orcoids. Concluding our trip through destruction are the Beastclaw Raiders, big bad ogres on big bad mammoths, the prototypical small but big army with only a few brain cells to share between them. Rounding out the factions is Death, the antithesis of life, and represented here by 2 boxes. Flesh Eater Courts are your ghouls, horrors and vampires. If you think macabre, you think these bad boys. And then at the very end of this showcase we have the Skeleton Horde, aka the undead, sans any flesh and peeled right back to the bone, but following a fairly traditional swords and sorcery mould. Also not pictured here are the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. They're essentially bone constructs made up from all the mortal races. So there you have it, the whole Welcome to Age of Sigmar product range. That's a lot of choice to digest, so I leave you with some parting advice. As with all things Dice vs Cards, I say pick what you like the look and feel of. Each of these start collecting sets will get you there or thereabouts to a medium sized army, and each of them also have their own separate battle tome that expands the lore and provides more rules that exemplifies each of their playstyles. But there's so much background on this here platform should you want to research them a little bit further. I would however never suggest when you're starting out to try and find out what the most competitive army is. Not only can that fluctuate, but surely you want to be interested in the models you're getting to the table, right? So now you know what your choices are. I do hope this video has been helpful in identifying how you might want to dive headfirst into Age of Sigmar. Be advised, most of what you've seen today represents good value in the grand scheme of things, but it's only downhill from there once you look to expand your armies in order to play medium and large size games with tournament legal armies. So prepare for a bit of a culture shock if you decide to go all in with one particular mob. However, that's it from me. Join us next time for some more detailed Age of Sigmar lore, and I'll see you next time.